Alright, good morning, Facebook friends. I hope we can pick this all up. This is our first time through. We're starting off, I want you to listen to this song, because I'm going to give a $50 gift card to the first person that can tell me the name of this song. Now, the artist that's playing this is not the most famous version of this. It was too expensive. So, I want you to think about it. It's a great, great song by actually a few famous artists have done this song. But it's a money song. And this show, what we're going to talk about is money and your money. I'm not going to tell you the name. I want you, the first person to tell me the name of this song is going to get a $50 gift card. So if you can go, I'm going to post that on our Facebook site there, or you can email me at mprather@m1m.com if you'd rather. That's mprather, P-R-A-T-H-E-R @m1m.com. You'll win a $50 gift card for naming the first person that names this song correctly. Alright. The title of our show is Why the Rich Stay Rich and the Poor Stay Poor, which is the title of my book right here. And here's what we're going to talk about, what the purpose of what the show is about. You know, this book I wrote is about wealth creation. And the reason I wrote the book is what I've experienced over my life journey. You know, those of you who know me well know that, my family, when I was growing up, most of my childhood was in Compton or in that surrounding area until about high school, and then we moved over to Orange County, and which was quite a culture change, especially at that time. But in my life journey, I've learned how hard it is, to build a life for yourself, and how hard it is to create wealth, create financial security. But why I titled Why the Rich Stay Rich and the Poor Stay Poor is it's way more than just about how to create wealth. See, the number one challenge we all have to deal with is our belief system. So I want you to think, what do you believe is possible for your life? There's a great video on YouTube that it's called The Strangest Secret. And The Strangest Secret talks about how 90% of the people never change their life circumstance. The rich stay rich, the middle class stay middle class, and the poor stay poor. By the way, this is by Earl Nightingale. I would really encourage you to go to YouTube, and it's really an audio that's on YouTube. But Earl Nightingale, if you're not familiar with him, was kind of the Tony Robbins of the 50s and 60s as far as a kind of a motivational speaker and teacher, but brilliant guy. And that point about 90% never changes in the life circumstances is so true, because it really starts at the key is what we believe. This slide here shares my favorite verse in the Bible. According to your faith, be it unto you. What that basically means is according to what you believe will come to pass. And an example of that is that 90%. The poor believe, when you're around poverty and no one has anything, you just look and say, nobody has anything, nobody's going anywhere, no one ever goes anywhere, so why should I believe that things are going to ever change? And they don't. But that just shows you how true this verse is because they believe they're supposed to be poor, they stay poor. This point is so critical because nothing changes until you start to open your mind. I want to share with you what is happening and what's happened. Most people know that a lot of people in our country are struggling, but they don't realize just how bad it is. This is the wealth distribution in this country. I want you to look at these stats. And we'll start from left to right. 1% of the people in this country control 35% of the wealth. The next 4% control 28%. You add the two together, that's 5% of the people control 63% of the wealth. The next 5%, 14%. Now we're at 77% of the wealth by the top 10%. And then the next 10%, another 12%. So we're basically about 88% of the wealth is controlled by the top 20%. Now let's look at the bottom 80. 9% of the people control, or I should say 20% of the people control 9% of the wealth. The next 20% control 3%, and the bottom 40% have 0. So the bottom 80% control 12% of the wealth. This wealth gap has been growing really since the 1940s. But in the last 10 years, this wealth gap accelerated at an unprecedented level. And today it's growing even faster. And all projections are that this is going to continue to grow dramatically over the next 5-10 years, and who knows how long. This last election, we saw a divide, and we've a change of direction. And before I go any further, let me tell you, I'm apolitical. I've removed myself from politics. Nothing about this show is about politics. What this is about, what this show is about, and the purpose of this is to help people to get on the right track. Because what I'm showing you doesn't have to be this way. But I want to share with you just the facts of where we are so you're crystal clear on how big a problem we have. In the 40s, the wealth gap, or the distribution of wealth, was 80% of the wealth was distributed over 90% of the people. Today you see the numbers and how that's been changing. Now, if this has been changing since after the war, since the mid-1940s, what does that tell you about government's ability to control this or stop this? Government cannot control this or stop. I don't care which party you're talking about, who the president is. When you have an 80-year history of failure and moving in a direction, that's got to tell you something. And what it tells me is the government cannot change this. But here's what this show's about. Here's what my journey is I've been in the real estate industry since I was 18. I'm 59 and a half. So it's about 41 years and some change. Here's my point in sharing that with you. I've learned a lot along the way. I'm going to share with you some really powerful and profound, life-altering things that I've learned. But before I get to that, here's what I believe in. I believe in pursuing, and the number one focus is making a difference. I know that we can change these numbers. We don't need the government to change these numbers. We need two things. We need belief. I need you to believe. And we need financial literacy. You need to know the path. I don't care how much faith you have, how much you believe. If you don't know how to do something, you're just going to pound your head against the wall. I'm going to show you how we can change this. But I want to share with you some other statistics that are really profound with respect to these numbers. 50% of the people in this country today rent. Now, it used to be about 60-40. What led to the financial meltdown, a lot of people don't remember this, but in the mid-1990s, historically, home ownership in this country has been in the low 60%, 60-61%. And the Clinton administration set an ambitious goal to raise it to 70%. Now, on the surface, that sounds great. Everybody was all for it. I was for it. And so that mandate came down to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac to say, look, we want to increase home ownership to 70%. Make it happen. That was the ignition to what started to evolve with more liberal underwriting guidelines. Now, in the beginning, the liberal underwriting guidelines weren't too bad, but as the years progressed, real estate literally became a Ponzi scheme, and we all know what happened with that. But here's my point and how this ties into these numbers. Is if we look at these numbers, today home ownership is down to about 50%. So 50% of the people rent. Now look at this. We're looking at the bottom 60% control 12% of the wealth. You look at the bottom 40%. Basically, 3% wealth of the bottom 40. Here's the point. The reason renters, they don't have any assets. See, wealth is about assets. It's money in the bank, it's equity in your home, it's investments and so on. The bottom 50% have no assets. If you have no assets, how are you going to grow wealth? Now, let me give you another important stat. In LA, 85% of property owners only own one property. 80% in Orange County only own one property. So let's work that out. The bottom 50 don't have any assets, basically. Of the remaining 50, 80% of 50% is basically 40%. If you look at the total, so if we add that to here, we take from the 50 plus 40, so the 90. So if we look at the top 10%, that's the number where it says 12% control the wealth. That's people that only own their home. The top 10%, or 7.5 to 10% of the people, own multiple properties. Do you see the parallel between this wealth distribution and just real estate ownership? That's one of the sorts. It's about assets and owning things. Now, here's what we're going to accomplish. I'm going to show you how we can improve those numbers. Instead of having only 12% of the wealth controlled by 60% of the people, we can move those numbers. I've done the math. Basically, any family, individual or family, that earns in excess of $60,000 a year, or about $5,000 a month, we can move them up if through financial literacy, and if they learn how to build wealth, we can move them up to get closer to that 90 percentile. That's a radical shift. We can move this wealth distribution level from 80% having so little to we can have at least 60% of these people pushed over to a level where they have the significant wealth growth that they need to live the life that they want to live. That's my ambition with this show. That's my ambition with the balance of my career. See, the truth is 59 and a half. I'm in the fourth quarter of my career. I don't want to ever retire. I love what I do. I love working with and helping with people. But the reality is 59 and a half, I'm going to live to be 120. And so I want to make this the center. It's an ambitious goal, I know, but I know it's possible because I know the way. What the big struggle is, I'm going to begin today to show you that path. So I need to get you to believe, and the only way you're going to believe is when you start to see. So here's the start. The secret to becoming wealthy is knowing how to create exponential wealth. Now here's the definition of exponential. In mathematics, of or expressed by a mathematical exponent, an exponential curve. Or in wealth terms, building wealth through other people's time and money. See, exponential wealth is growing it through multiple channels, multiple people, multiple resources. It's not linear. It's not a straight line. Anyone can build exponential wealth. So let me give you some examples of exponential wealth. Now, big ones are like Steve Jobs, right? When he took Apple. When you think of business owners, Steve Jobs with Apple when he started, what Bill Gates and so on and so forth, all these different companies, they create exponential wealth because they're making money on other people's time. They start hiring more and more employees. They're selling more and more products, and it just steadily grows, and they create this exponential wealth. Anybody can do that. You don't need to be an employer. You don't need to have, the iPhone or something like that to make that happen if you know how. I'm going to share with you, I'm going to teach you how to create exponential wealth so that you can start making money on other people's time and on other people's money. And you can take your money and you can leverage it and scale it so that you're making money on multiple channels and multiple resources so you have this exponential source. I'm going to teach you exactly how to do that. That's how you accelerate wealth growth, and it's like a snowball effect. It starts small. The first turn of a snowball, it doesn't get that much bigger, but as we start to add these channels, the snowball gets bigger and bigger, and the velocity of the growth accelerates, and so the money's growing. Not only is it growing bigger, but it's growing faster. It's the power of compounding, basically. and how we can apply compounding to your life and to your money. Now, how to create exponential wealth. The right answers start with the right questions. You have to ask the right questions. See, the average person asks the wrong questions. Here's what the average person asks. How much am I making and how much do I save? I want you to think about how much am I making and how much do I save? Does that sound exponential to you? Does that sound like the ability to multiply wealth? No, it's not. And that's why so many people are broke. And that's why the wealth gap gets wider and wider. Here are the right questions. How do I create recurring revenue? See, wealthy people ask those kinds of questions. How do I create recurring revenue that's going to keep coming in month after month, that's never going to run out, and it's going to keep growing? How many people are writing you checks every month? Now, that's not a rhetorical question. That's a real question. I want you to think about how many people are writing you checks every month. If the answer is no one, you're not creating exponential wealth. Now, remember I talked about the wealth gap in the beginning of this, and we talked about the percentages. 50% rent. Nobody writing those people checks. Of the 50% that own, 80% of those people only own their home. In Orange County, 85% in LA County. Who's writing those people checks? No one. Most people, they are so dialed in because we've been conditioned and trained to focus on just us and going it alone. You can't go it alone. It's too hard. Well, I'm going to show you the math. Let me just show you the math. And why inflation will crush your 401k. This is really, really frustrating to me in that, about 35 years ago, the government saw that the world has been changing, and it's always changing, but the world economically began changing pretty dramatically about 50 years ago when it started to shift into a global economy. And this was kind of the early signs of, the best indication of this was really the auto industry. We started seeing, Toyota, all the Japanese firms, Mercedes, BMW, and so on, started really pushing the American companies around. And there were a lot of factors with that, the unions, pensions, and different things like that, and the economics. The American companies couldn't compete, and so they started stripping away pensions. And pensions in this country on the private sector are pretty much all but gone. I mean, there's very few, and the few that are left aren't really worth anything. With one exception, that's if you work for the government. The government pensions are pretty outstanding, but in the private sector, they just really don't exist. So about 35 years ago, the government came out with this idea of the 401k. And, since the time we were kids, we've all been taught the same principle: save. Save as much as we can save. Just keep saving. So the 401k is addressed to that point of let's save as much as you can. But I'm going to show you the sad reality of the 401k. It's not a solution. The number of people that can retire has been declining for pretty much the last 35 years. And the wealth gap, as you can see. My point of that is the 401k and the IRA are miserable failures, but most people don't know it and they don't know why, and I'm going to explain right now why. So we're going to take a millennial that's 32 years old, just really getting started. They start their 401k, they put $1,000 in there. They're saving $250 a month. Now the average person in this country saves less than $200 a month. Over 30 years, if they average a 5% return, and this is after fees, after management fees, which are usually around 1.5%, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less, depending on the size of the money. But if we use 1.5%, that means they have to average about 6.5%. Their total lifetime savings is $212,000. If their expenses today are $5,000 a month, inflation has averaged 3% for the last 100 years. In 30 years, their cost of living is $12,000 a month. See, this is one of the biggest mistakes, or one of the biggest misunderstandings. People have no idea how inflation impacts their expenses. If I was to ask the average person, what are your expenses are $5,000 a month, what do you think you're going to be in 30 years? They know they're going to be more, but they have no idea that we're talking more than double. Most of them think maybe $7,500. But look what this translates to, $145,000. Now, the other point I want to talk about with inflation is, I want you to think about what bills that you have go up. What does inflation affect? Or probably an easier way really to analyze it, what doesn't inflation affect? Because if we look at it, it affects your car insurance, it affects all your food, it affects your utility bills, it affects almost everything you're doing. But let me show you, we divide this out. We got a year and a half. Lifetime savings, 212, $145,000 in expenses. We have less than a year and a half before they're out of money. Financial planners use a 4% rule. What that means is 4% of your life savings so we can stretch your money out. $708 plus the Social Security. Can't retire on that. Here are the major flaws of the 401k. Number one, it requires far more money be saved than the average person can save. I mean, if we look at that, the majority of people in this country can save $200 a month or less. What good is a 401k? Number two is you can't access the money till you're 59 and a half without a severe penalty. So if you're hurting financially, you lose your job, you can have a medical problem, right when you need the money most, and it's your money. That's the thing that really burns me about it. It's your money. Government says, you can't have your money. You take your money, I'm going to penalize you 10%. Number three is it doesn't provide any help along the way. There's no cash flow. You can't, there's no help until you're 59 and a half. It's 100% on your back. Wouldn't you rather have some income, some alternative income, some help along the way that keeps growing so it's helping you now, not just when you're 59 and a half or when you retire at 65, but it helps you now and then you can retire with it? And upon withdrawal, after 59 and a half, you still get your full income tax hit on it. So here's how we get to how to build exponential wealth. It's through what I call the science of building wealth. See, there are 7 principles to the science of building wealth. And when we get into the science of building wealth, this is how you create exponential wealth. Now I'm going to go through these rather quickly, but I want you to understand these principles is how we create the exponential wealth. Number one is leverage. And what leverage means is making money on other people's money. Leverage turns little money into big money, but there are risks with leverage, and you have to know how to manage risks and how far to take leverage. And there are a lot of factors, including how old you are and how much you're making and so on, that has to do with leverage. Number two is growth rate, is understanding growth rate. You know, we all know growth rate is not a straight line up or down. You know, the economic conditions affect us, and so we have to understand what affects the economy, what affects investments. The affordability index is a key index in the real estate world. How affordable are things? When the rubber band of affordability gets stretched toward the limit, tells you there are only a few things that can happen, and we're going to start to reach those kinds of ceilings. And then how do we continue to make money in that environment? And why market timing is irrelevant, and how you can make money and continue to create exponential growth, meaning making money on other people's time and efforts in any environment. Number three, debt management is understanding how to manage your debt. Most people don't have any clue how to do that, and they get too much bad debt. Bad debt is personal debt. Investment debt, though, is a good thing. If you're creating more income than what your debt is, then that's a good thing. But most people have very little good debt, and they have pretty much all bad debt. And how we can manage the principal reduction so that we continue. First, we want to grow wealth. Then what we want to do is grow alternative income. Number four is investment income, is how to build investment income. And see, here's the beauty about this, is everybody thinks, well, I got to save a ton of money before I can create investment income. Wrong. You don't need any money to get into the game to start to secure assets. Now, some of you are going, what the heck is Mark saying? You don't need, you have $250, you can get in the game. Live off the investment income, not the principal. That's the other thing is the majority of people, everything they're taught is save as much as you can, retire and then live on your life savings. That is flat wrong. What you want to do is create enough investment income and create this recurring revenue that you're making money off of other people's time and effort and and other people's money, so that it'll run in perpetuity and you can pass it on to your heirs. You want to have your income always stay ahead of inflation, and you want to understand how to manage the cash flow in that. And we talk about how we can do that with rental income. Number 5, taxation, is understanding the tax law. Now, none of us, I'm not a CPA, I'm not a tax expert. I work with good CPAs, but you need to know the basic rules of tax benefits. And in the real estate world, real estate has really an unfair advantage over any other investment. The tax write-offs that you receive through real estate is a huge advantage over their investments. And by the way, we're talking about that tax reform law. I don't know how that's going to finally shake out, but I'm really glad to see that the mortgage deduction and the property tax deduction, while it's been reduced, is still there, where other investments, they don't have any write-off, and almost every other write-off is gone. Income property has depreciation write-offs. And we talk about how you can exchange properties and create more wealth that way. Number 6 is asset protection. And by the way, I had an attorney friend of mine scheduled to be here today. But Thomas had a family crisis. He had to fly out of state to deal with the family emergency. So we'll get him rescheduled. I don't know if he can be here next week or not, but we'll get him rescheduled. And because this is what we're going to talk about, is asset protection. It takes a lifetime to build wealth. It takes one lawsuit to lose it. So understanding how to protect your wealth as you build it along the way, and then so you can pass it on after you leave this planet. Number 7 is risk. Understanding and controlling risk is critical to wealth growth and preservation. Risk, there are many, many components to analyzing where you put your money, how you accumulate assets. And so understanding how to analyze the risk with respect to the specific investment, understanding how risk is affected by the economic conditions of the economy and the marketplace. So there are many factors to that. We need to manage that. We need to have it planned out strategically. And then looking at some people, market timing. I'm not big on market timing. See, market timing means you're getting in and you're getting out. And unless you have a crystal ball, market timing is extremely risky. So I don't look at market timing. If you like to play the market timing game, then that's, I would just caution you that is very risky, and it's like Vegas. Sometimes you're going to win and sometimes you're going to lose. You need to have a strategy that's going to work over your whole life, that it's pretty much fail-proof. I'm going to wrap up here pretty quickly, but there are 3 questions that we all need to have the answers to, and very few people do. So if you have a pen and a paper, write these questions down, because when you have the answers to these questions, the worrying about money in your future is going to go away. Number 1, what will your expenses be at the time of your retirement? You know what they are today? I showed you earlier how far they can go up. We need to calculate that. It's not that difficult. I can help you calculate that within a couple minutes. It's pretty simple to do if you have the financial tools. Number 2 is, how will you create the investment income you need to cover these expenses? So if your expenses are $5,000 a month and you're going to retire in 20, 25 years, let's say, and they're going to be $8,000 or $9,000, do you have any clue how you're going to create $8,000 or $9,000 a month? Most people, and when I say most, 95% of people have no clue. You need to know how you're going to create that income. And number 3 is when. Let's say your magic number is 5,000 today. It's going to be 9,000 in 20 years. How are you going to create 9,000 a month? And when are you going to create? How long is it going to take with your plan? Do you have a specific strategic plan? You can get the answers to these questions and know exactly, through creating exponential wealth, how to make this a reality. See, here's what I am excited about, is bringing you the life of your dreams. Now that may sound kind of not businesslike, maybe not real to you, but it is real. It is real. You know, when I work with people, especially younger people, you know, I can't go back and be 25 years old again, but I can take what I've learned over 40 years and transfer that knowledge into a 25-year-old or a 30-year-old getting their life started and teach them a straight line to creating exponential wealth and creating the life of their dreams. And that, to me, there's nothing more rewarding than that. See, creating the life of your dreams does not happen by accident. It's a journey, and this journey requires determination, and it requires faith, and it requires a lot of knowledge. So are you ready to begin your journey? Join our movement. Today is the beginning of a movement for me, and that movement is to change the course of America. And I know some of you are going, well, this, and I know Mark's lost his mind, but I believe in big, ambitious goals. Because here's why I want you to know why I believe in big, ambitious goals. Because I believe all things are possible with God. And this is my God journey. And I believe because I know, because I've done the math. 60% of the people in this country can be wealthy, not 10%. 60 can be wealthy. If they will learn, if they will believe and take the time to learn how to create exponential wealth. I hope you will pass this on, share this with your friends, because it's absolutely possible. It can be done. You can learn this. You can do this. But you got to believe, and you got to invest the time. So I hope you share this video. If you're looking to learn more and you want to get the answers to these 3 questions, we call it our financial freedom analysis. We will provide you for free a financial freedom analysis. Now, this path of exponential wealth, I will tell you, is through the real estate world. Real estate has the ability to create income at an unprecedented level through other people's time and money that no other asset has. But you have to know how to do it. And this message I'm sharing out is to realtors right now. The truth is, 1% of residential realtors know how to do this. They've never been trained. If you're a residential realtor and you want to learn how to build exponential wealth, help your clients, is I mark1wealthacademy.com. You go to the website, check it out. My personal email is mprather@m1m.com. If you want to learn how to bring this education, how to guide your clients to the life of their dreams, how to build exponential wealth, reach out to me, and we do training every Tuesday and Thursday. I will show you how you can start to learn this. And to all my friends, I hope you believe that you can be wealthy, that your children, and most of my friends are married, their kids, are adults, that are married and grandkids are coming on the way, is if you don't have a wealth plan to help your kids and your grandkids, then let's start that journey, because we can make that a reality. Let's teach as many people in this country how to build exponential wealth and move that curve from 10% of the people being financially secure and wealthy, and move it radically over to, as I said, 60% can be there. That concludes anything. Serena, is there anything else? Any questions? Anything else? Okay. All right. If you have any questions, like I say, shoot me an email. Look forward to seeing you next week. I'll let you know when we're going to have our attorney speaker. Have a great weekend.